Yeah, let's look through the picks and just kind of you mentioned earlier when you talk about our mock draft, and
Hmm.
obviously our picks by no means are going to be accurate. It'd be
Right.
pretty impressive if they are, but
Yeah.
based off our predictions and our love and passion for fantasy football, let's look through just the quarterbacks and real quick in this first round. Um, Starting off with the quarterbacks and Kenny Pickett if he went to the Falcons, in terms of fantasy, I think that's a good dynasty stash, but not somebody that anybody would draft in a redraft league.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the Falcons are still needing receiver help either way. Like they're
Mhm.
right now rolling out their number one is Zacchaeus, who's
They yeah,
their
they don't really have a running back either unless they really believe
yeah.
Cordero Patterson's the man.
Yeah, and they all they have is him and Mike Davis.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do with their other picks. Um, they also, God, they're such a garbage team. They need a lot of help on the defense too. Minus AJ Terrell.
And it's
I,
such a shame because why am I blanking on their tight end's name? Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
He's so talented, and he was a bust in fantasy last year. I mean, he wasn't bad, but like I don't think he was
He just
anything
didn't
special.
score touchdowns. Is
Yeah,
his
they
issue.
yeah, in terms of fantasy, he just wasn't productive, and I don't really see him taking much of a jump this year either, especially because
Yeah,
who knows what their quarterback situation is going to look like.
I think if this were to happen, Kenny Pickett elevates in dynasty the value of Kyle Pitts. If it's just Marcus Mariota, we're in trouble.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so continuing this quarterback trend, I mean, Malik Willis to the Seahawks is kind of interesting because I think as a dynasty rookie pick, Malik Willis has as much upside as anyone, which will force him really high up. Um, with that said, I think he will be a huge miss to the receivers. Um, he's not entirely accurate. He's really like, I mean, he's kind of like a Lamar Jackson light, but less of a thrower, I would say,
Yeah,
and playing a much worse competition. I don't know. I don't see it being beneficial for any of the receivers. The running backs, it might open up some space for, like a Rashad Penny.
hmm,
That might matter more in redraft for this year. And then whatever happens with Chris Carson, I guess, is something to note as well.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the Seahawks were such a bad team last year,
Hmm.
but if Russell Wilson was healthy that whole season, they could have potentially been a playoff team. DK Metcalf didn't have a great year. Tyler Lockett was their best receiver, so they just need to find a way to get their studs the ball. And who knows? Like Rashad Penny really kind of took off at the ending of the season there. Um, so if he's able to produce 100 rushing yards a game for them, they could have some offense there if they were to take Malik Willis.
Yep.
And then Matt Corral, if he goes to the Lions, you could stash him away. I personally don't know if I'd take him, but who knows? Like I think Jared Goff's going to be their guy from now on, unless he were to establish some type of injury. But they just don't really have any offensive weapons. They have St. Brown and DeAndre Swift, and
And
Hawkins,
Shark.
but yeah, and Shark now. But other than them, they're just not going to be a good team this year. I'd probably hammer the under on their over under wins this year. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
so I don't think I would touch Matt Corral, but I think,
Mhm.
like I said earlier, he could very well be one of the top. He could be the top quarterback in this draft class. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
have to
mean,
see.
that's the kind of the crazy thing about all these quarterbacks. Like, you really don't know ultimately.
Mhm.
And there's mocks out there that have Desmond Ritter as the number one quarterback, and I personally, watching him in Cincinnati, thought he was just kind of average.
Mhm.
But that's kind of like this quarterback class is just not that great. Um, I think the other thing with Matt Corral is like realistically, if he comes in for Jared Goff or like they don't see improvement, I think that they might draft a quarterback next year too in the very beginning of the first round and try to just get rid of Corral if that were to happen. Um, I don't think it really matters in terms of anyone else's fantasy value because Goff is like probably better than Corral will ever be.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't really see that changing much. The next one in Garrett Wilson to the Jets. This is kind of interesting because from a dynasty perspective, you got to wonder how much volume is there to go around in this system. Zach Wilson was not good last year. I do anticipate he'll take some steps forward, but to have enough volume for CJ Uzama, who they just signed, Conklin, sorry, who they just signed, and Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and Garrett Wilson, it's kind of like pick your poison. Like I just don't trust any of them, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I think he's going to be like an Elijah Moore type player if they take him. It'd be smart for the Jets to take a receiver, and I think whoever they take at that pick, whether it's Wilson or London or Jamison Williams, is going to produce for them. So I think whoever the Jets take there, assuming they take a receiver, might not have a incredible year, but I think whoever they take, it'll complement Elijah Moore well and CJ Uzama.
And then we got Drake London to the Commanders. This one I think is kind of dependent on what happens with Terry, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know. I mean, it would kind of just be too. Well, what's interesting with him is, and I didn't realize that my screen was sharing that whole time.
It wasn't.
Oh, okay. So what's interesting with Drake London is he actually played out of the slot a decent amount as well.
You could put him anywhere.
You can put him anywhere, but you could do the same with Terry. I don't know. I mean, that one also, like, Carson Wentz is, kind of average, and he's the same guy who sprained his both ankles on one play last year. Like, do you really think that he's going to elevate it much more than a Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was healthy was? Probably not. Like, I don't know. But from a dynasty perspective, I would take the swing. I think
this might be a bold statement, but I think the Commanders it's a new start for them. They finally have a name. They finally have a quarterback.
They do have a name.
Heineke's their backup, correct?
I would assume so as of right now.
Yeah, which isn't a bad backup at all. Antonio Gibson needs to have a bounce back year, and Wentz is assuming he gets the starting position. He can, if he doesn't do the boneheaded things he does and he can stay healthy, he'll be a decent quarterback this year. And they're not going to win the NFC East, but I could see them getting, I don't know how many games they won last year, but I think they'll win more games than they did last year. If there'd be a team, especially with Chase Young, and if he comes back healthy, they're not going to be a team that's just going to be walked over. So if they take someone like Drake London, they're not, their offense is going to be able to produce points.
So I just want to look this up quick, but let's see. Oh God, I can't believe how hard this is to find. Because I typed in Commanders and they were the football team last year. They were 7-10 last year.
Okay, yeah, so I could see them winning, 8, 9, even 10 games this year potentially. Might be a bit of a reach, but I don't think, like I said. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a team that's just going to let you walk all over them. They're going to be teams that are going to play you hard till the end. Like even this past year, they beat the Bucks. So it's like those are the types of games, and they add someone like Drake London where it's not going to be easy. But then you go to another NFC East team, and if the Eagles were to take, I'm hoping they take a receiver. If they take another Alabama receiver out of Jamison Williams, like you said, it just kind of depends on his recovery. He's already been out there. I've seen videos of him running routes, so yeah, that's a good sign. And I remember going into this draft, a little different injury and different story, but Devonta Smith was hurt coming into this draft, so they could take him, and they have enough receivers where they don't need to play him every game. But in terms of fantasy, I think that'd be a great pick in a dynasty league, and maybe even like a very last pick in a redraft league or someone you'd pick up off the bench.
Yeah, I think if you went to the Eagles, it's kind of a similar situation to the Jets, in my opinion, where it's like how much volume is there to go around. Jamison Williams might command a ton of targets. Who knows? Like when he comes back, I mean, he was amazing last year.
Yeah,
but with
and what was the name of Bama's other stud receiver?
Mechie.
Yeah, when he went down, they relied on Jamison to kind of just take over for them, and he did in that game. And in the semifinal game, he played really well. But then he unfortunately got that injury.
Yeah, I can't believe Mechie also tore his ACL. That's crazy. Um, but yeah, so I'm like I'm a little weary just because Goddard is there, who's going to command targets, and Jalen Hurts runs the ball a lot. We'll see
Mhm.
if things change, but he, as of right now, what we know, he runs the ball a lot. He has Goddard, he has Smith, he has Quez Watkins. Um, I'd be a little nervous of like how much volume there is to go around, but
Mm.
this next receiver I actually think would get a ton of volume. It's Traylon Burks with the Saints. The Saints haven't had a second receiver in a very long time that you could
Yeah.
count on. Michael Thomas and who? Like you have like Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway. You had oh god, who's the I can't think of his name. Who's kind of short. He's really really fast.
I know you're talking
Deontay
about
Harris. That's his name.
Deontay Harris. Yeah.
So he's super fast. But none of them like do anything really. They're all like fine complementary pieces, but they all never really did anything.
Yeah, they had zero offense this past year, other than Kamara, who really wasn't even anything
Yeah.
special. So,
And they don't have tight ends.
oh
Trautman
yeah,
got hurt.
hmm
Like they don't really have a great tight end either. So
yeah. So in terms of fantasy, it makes sense to take someone like Traylon Burks because they're going to need to get him the football.
mhm.
But I think out of all these receivers, if I were to draft anyone, like if I were to have a pick in our dynasty league, and I were to take a receiver first, I'd take Chris
Yeah.
Olave if he went to the Chargers. Really, any receiver goes to the Chargers, I think is going to be a great pick because you have a great offense, you have a great quarterback, and people who are going to be like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are going to be drawing most of the attention from the defense. Means it's going to open up some space for someone like Chris Olave or Traylon Burks or whoever if they were to take a receiver in this draft.
Yeah, I really do wonder if that's why the Saints came up, or if it's for a tackle maybe to replace Taron Armstead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we have Jahan Dotson and the Steelers. This would be a tough one because Deontay isn't he supposed to be extension eligible as well?
I believe so. Yes.
So that's another tough one. If he left, I would be all in because I don't think Claypool is like that amazing. I think he's just a field stretcher.
Yeah, it's just kind of a replacement for Juju, and it's still up in the air with what happens with their quarterback situation.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't know if there's a place like where I think Steelers receivers, right? I don't know. I mean, they usually Steelers receivers play pretty well, so I would trust Mike Tomlin and their pick over my own judgment, and I like Jahan Dotson a lot, so I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And then
and then with this last pick, we have Sky Moore. But assuming the Packers take a receiver in this draft, whoever they do take, is it a no-brainer to you that you take this receiver in a draft because whether it's dynasty or a redraft? Because yeah, you have Aaron Rodgers behind you, and he's going to have to find a way to spread that football around because without Devontae Adams, they don't really have a receiver on their team who he's going to be throwing the ball to 10 to 20 times a game. So
yeah,
is it a risky pick? Yes, but with Aaron Rodgers, and with how their season ended last year, it wouldn't be a stupid pick in my opinion.
hot take. I think it's a trap pick. I think that, like they took Amari Rogers for example. What was in the third round last year, and everyone thought that maybe he would be something. I just think that it's a trap. Like I don't know. Maybe they'll be in the sweepstakes for Debo. I would be if I was them. The whole issue with paying Devontae was the fact that he was older, and now Debo is on the market, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And Debo's 26 and available. They'll have to pay him too, but I mean, Sky Moore is great. Like I really like Sky Moore. He's really good after the catch. He would fit Aaron Rodgers, but I think it's kind of a trap for him to go as high as he will go. If there's a guy like George Pickens who they take, who's also a phenomenal receiver,